Hello, my name is Claudia. I'm a compulsive eater. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the meeting. Um, I love meetings at this time. I heard it said the other day in a meeting, um, I need God early because my brain can ruin my day from the bed to the bathroom. It's just so true of me. And it's not even that far. The rooms are literally next to each other. Um, so yeah, so I need the 12 steps. I need you guys, and yeah, I need a big God in my life to make my life work. I am Claudia. I'm middle-aged these days. I'm across 3 fellowships, so I'm a triple winner. And in fact, and I only mention that because it's not particularly relevant to this one, but I didn't come into this one first. I came into a different fellowship, and then it became very apparent after about five or 6 years of sobriety in that one that my eating was going to kill me, very probably quite slowly, but it just got worse and worse and worse. And fortunately, I at that time knew that if I worked the steps, got a sponsor, took the action, that it would work, and it has, which is just amazing, really. So, but I think that the food addiction has been with me the longest. Like it is from my very earliest memories of either seeking comfort in food, or trying to control my environment through food, manipulating things. That's been with me since, I don't know, 7, 6, my very earliest memories. So I my first kind of awareness of my wonky relationship with food was when I was sent to boarding school. I was sent to boarding school at 6, and they had a tuck shop, and we were given like this kind of box, and every Sunday we got to eat something from this box of goodies. And I just remember that it being one of the sole joys of my life as a 6-year-old, like being able to kind of like, just for a couple of minutes, um, be moved to out of my angst and loneliness and into this kind of place where things felt ease, I felt comfortable, I felt joy, and it just went from there. And I think for me the problem with this particular um, addiction or disease, as I would call it, is that it has and can morph quite considerably. Like alcoholism is one thing, it's fairly black and white though. Don't drink alcohol, don't go to pubs, don't go down the wine aisle at the supermarket. But for me and my eating disorder, it started out as for many years heavy restriction. I've been anorexic a few times, much to my parents' dismay and concern. And I've been bulimic, not a very good one, as I couldn't vomit very well, so I used other ways in which to purge. Wouldn't recommend any of those. And then ultimately, it morphed into binge eating, and so that's very deceptive. It's not like black and white, and those early days of being able to restrict, I'm not going to lie, gave me a sense of power, control, a sense of being able to play God, and have create this kind of power that in a world where I just felt so fearful and out of control. Generally I would become anorexic, for example, after some big life event, like I would get dumped, and then I would feel, sort of unworthy, pointless. But I would restrict my food, and that gave me a high. It gave me a sense of, okay, well, I can control this. I can look really skinny. But fortunately for me, and I'll go back to my story in a little bit. Fortunately for me, by the end of it all, the restriction was absolutely impossible despite my best efforts, and I was just binge eating, and I thank that facet of the illness for getting me into this fellowship, because it felt so out of control. I felt so powerless, that I realized, I just wasn't going to, I wasn't going to be able to manage it. And my rock bottom in OA wasn't like a crash bang wallop moment that you get. It wasn't the sort of dramatic moment that you get potentially in other fellowships. It was more this kind of awful realization that no matter what I did in life, career success, raising children, having fun, none of it mattered. My whole life would just be defined by my constant struggle and having my ass kicked by my compulsive eating. And it just seems so depressing. All of these things, these good things that I gained from being in recovery just were so meaningless. And so after 5 years in a different fellowship, very grumpily, I did not want to be here at all. I started going to OA meetings, and I looked for the differences. You did it wrong. Your scripts were wrong. You wore the wrong shoes. It was just really silly. I did all the things that you don't want to do, and of course, because of it, my eating just got worse and more painful. And every time I went to an OA meeting, I would just go, well, they're not doing it right. I'll just go back to my other fellowship and work that harder. But the reality was, for me, that I needed a sponsor, obviously, to work the steps, but I needed someone to show me how to eat sanely. I had no idea what sane eating looked like. Honestly, I tell this story a lot, but when I first came in and had to commit a food plan, my sponsor pointed out that having, my only source of carbohydrate is one particular food group was absolutely insane. You just can't eat that same thing morning, lunch and dinner. And I was so afraid of, like opening this kind of can of worms and then not being able to stop eating. It was, so just from a really practical standpoint, I needed an OA sponsor to point out to me when my thinking and my actions were insane around food. And I would long for the days where I could just be a good anorexic and restrict, but those days were gone. I'd wake up each morning, this day I'm not going to eat anything, and then of course, by lunchtime all bets were off, and I was, in the food and experiencing so much shame from that. And it's deceptive as well, because it's such a kind of closed door version of the addiction of the disease. For all purposes, I can be out in the world, living my life, pretending to be normal, and no one would ever know for years what's really going on. And they might think I'm a bit odd and a bit erratic, but they wouldn't necessarily know that I'm feeding this awful eating disorder at home. And I think that's one of the other things, isn't it? For putting on this kind of face out to the world, and then just getting home and binging on everything and anything that I can find. So long story short, eventually, it just got so painful that I just had to admit defeat, and I'm really grateful for that. Really, people call it a rock bottom. I think I was given a moment of grace where I was finally teachable and not arrogant, teachable enough to ask somebody to be my sponsor, and and it's purely just because I went to a meeting one day and I heard this person share, not even about the food. They shared about a relationship breakup that they had experienced, and they talked with such peace and serenity about this, relationship breakup. That in that moment I realized that it's not really about the food. It is about the food, but it's also more about me living a life and being a human among humans in this world. So I asked this person to sponsor me, and they were the right person for me. They were, I wouldn't say strict, but they were able to call me on my shit, and I really needed that. I was very dishonest, still can be actually, mostly to myself, but I was very dishonest, and I was gripping so tightly, that very slowly they began through working with me to, like, I could just feel my fingers like there, oh no, and I go back to no, I can't do it, and then and so on and so forth, until um eventually now I enjoy food and I eat 3 meals a day. So they were a little bit frightening and exactly what I needed, because I was a bullshit merchant. Could not be honest. Thank you. And I came in and I worked the steps and I sent a food plan over, and I wasn't instantly abstinent. Fortunately, this person, for me anyway, I have no opinion on it, but this person allowed me my relapses whilst I was, working step one, step two. And as I worked through the steps, these binges just became less, and then eventually they stopped. And for me, I think the biggest gift that the steps has given me was step three. Like, I had a God in my life, but this God wasn't particularly bothered with my food. I needed a God that was very invested in my OA recovery, very invested, and cared deeply about what I ate, about how I fueled my body and nourished myself through food, and then ultimately a loving God that I could take into the world with me, and was deeply invested in my relationships and my work, and how I was in the world. And I've been abstinent now a few years, and there are, because of this higher power, things that I can do now that I just couldn't. I could not go for a meal with my family. It was like a double whammy. One, I was in a restaurant, which was triggering for me, and two, I was with my family, which was so triggering for me. Like, for years I could not, and I'd put on this act with them, like I'd eat like a normal person, and then the stress of it all would have me driving to a petrol station on the way home, and just buying a ton of food just to, like, just to numb my brain, my thinking from this event. Now I went for a meal with my mum and my brother last week. I didn't even think about it. Like, I just looked at the menu, saw something that was appealing and healthy, because I'm really enjoy eating food that nourishes me, and had a nice time. I asked open-ended questions. I was interested in them. Like, yeah. And then we had a cuddle, a kiss, and parted ways, and that was that. We all got on with our days. Now, if that isn't a God-given miracle for me, I really don't know. I really don't know what is. Like, that's just mad. So today, my life isn't defined by food, which in itself is mind-blowing. And through working the steps, and I don't know, you might have heard of this. It's talked about quite a lot in some fellowships. The program can be boiled down to 3 statements: trust in God, clean house, help others. And those are the rules I kind of live and die by today. I trust in God as much as I can. It's not perfect. Sometimes I like to take it back. I clean my house. I make sure I stay on top of my resentments, and they will happen. And I do my best to help others, both in and outside of the fellowship. And that works out really well. So I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for the meeting, by the way. It's just wonderful to get recovery in at this time of day. So thanks, guys.